ChessDiagnostic.
Hello everybody and welcome to ChessDiagnostic. This is Andrew, and today I'm going to cover a game that was played in 1992 between Shirov and Ivanchuk. And we're really going to take a look inside of Ivanchuk's mind in this game. I want you to understand every single move in this game and the ideas behind it. It's a Dutch defense, so this is for all the Dutch defense fans out there. I know they're out there. Let's start. So it's d4, e6, Ivanchuk's black, and then after c4 we get f5. Now, the strength of the Dutch defense is that it really doesn't require that much theory, because black's going to set up the same stonewall pawn structure with d5 and c6 in every game. And he gets pretty easy piece development, actually. Of course, the drawback is these dark square weaknesses, but he does have a strong point on e4 for his knight. So, Shirov chooses to fianchetto that bishop, a standard play. c6. Now, white could play something like d5, but if he advances his pawns too early, this is just an example line, then actually those pawns, even though they cut into black's position, can become a weakness, and he'll lose pawns like this. In this line, for example, he loses that d6 pawn. So that's why white normally doesn't advance his pawns too early. Instead, we see knight to f3, and then d5, creating this stonewall pawn structure. And now black's strategy is simply just to develop, occupy the e4 square, increase activity for his pieces, and possibly start a kingside attack, playing something like g5. Now white's main strategy is to occupy the center and the weak dark squares, and see what black does. So after castles, bishop to d6, just developing a bishop. b3, white's planning to fianchetto that bishop and put pressure. Queen to e7, of course he could have just castled, but he develops his queen and maintains some elasticity in the position. Castles, and then knight to d2, preparing to reinforce that e5, knight with knight to f3. Now that's a correct strategy, attacking that knight, reinforcing it, and then we see after knight to e4, Shirov goes a little astray with his strategy. He should have just maybe developed his bishop, activated his rooks, even pushed some pawns, and he should have maintained the tension. But he tries really after knight to d3 to, after b6, controlling the c4 square, he tries to rid his knight of that square of f3 so he could use it to play f3 with his pawn and chase his knight back. Now, it makes sense to control the squares in your position. If we divide the board in half, you really want to control all the squares in your position. So we can see that this knight is kind of a thorn in black's side, as well as if we divide the board here, we can see that this knight is really a thorn in white's side because it can't really be chased away. If the bishop takes, then he'll have a very strong pawn on e4 controlling these two squares. So it makes sense, but it does create weaknesses in his pawn structure. The bishop develops to a b7, also protecting that c6 pawn. And now we get a move that doesn't really make any sense. So he automatically trades for that knight on d7, and he just gave away his strongest inactive piece for a relatively inactive and purposeless knight. Then he plays f3, chasing the knight back. But now his pawn structure and his bishop is blocked, so there are drawbacks to every kind of move. And then we see another inaccuracy with c5. So after these trades, knight takes, bishop takes, we immediately see e5. Now Ivanchuk is standing quite better already because he has a strong pawn center, and the main drawback of white's position is his very inactive bishops. The light square bishop is blocked by white's own pawns, and the dark square bishop will be blocked by Ivanchuk's pawns. So the right strategy when you have two bishops is to try to open the position with pawns, and Shirov tries that, but after Ivanchuk activates his own bishop, controlling the very important f1 square, the rook has to move. He takes, and then he plays d4, keeping the center closed because he wants to keep these bishops out of play, as well as establishing a very strong protected passed pawn on d4. So Ivanchuk's minor pieces are going to stand a lot better. Even though it looks like the bishop's on the side, it's really cutting into white's position. And with this open f-file, Ivanchuk will be the only one controlling it, because there's really no way after queen moves to d2 and then the knight comes in. This knight will be coming into f2, or it could even come to e3. And there's no way to really contest the f-file, because he can't bring the rook on any of these squares. The pawn's controlling it. This bishop cannot be developed anywhere. The c5 pawn is even blocking it. So let's see. He pins that knight, trying to maintain some activity. Just reinforcing the knight, trying to develop his bishop. It's not any more active on that square than on the initial square. And now with queen to f7, we could see the strength of Ivanchuk's position. Already he has a crazy attack on this f-file, and he's going to have mating threats soon. Now, if white tries to relieve the tension by taking that knight, which he doesn't do, but he would get a horrible ending. In an example line, he would simply double his rooks, trade queens, and he really has to defend against the mate threat, because this pawn's controlling here and the bishop's controlling that square. So even he has to keep his rooks on the initial square, and then black would just simply dominate the 7th rank, double his rooks, and he'd win very easily. So we don't see that miserable ending. Let's go back here. Bishop out, queen to f7. He's just trying to activate this bishop, but there's really nothing for it to do. Ivanchuk uses his time to develop his least active piece, which is the rook on a8, bringing the rook up. And now, after the bishop moves back, trying to contest that f1 square, it's already too late. Knight to f2. The queen will come in to f3 and threaten mate. If the bishop moves and tries to control that square, then there's already ideas of just bringing the rook in, attacking the king side, and there's too many threats. So Shirov makes a horrible blunder, bishop takes, and then after queen to f3 threatening mate, the only solution is for the queen to take. Shirov resigned in this position, and we get another Ivanchuk brilliancy. So I saw this game and a few others by Magnus Carlsen playing the Dutch defense. It looks like Magnus Carlsen won 3 games in the past 2 years against 2,700 players playing the Dutch. And I really think I'm going to incorporate this opening into my repertoire, because all you have to do is play f5, e6, d5, and c6, and the stonewall structure really provides a lot of dynamic chances for black. So I hope you enjoyed this game, and I hope I covered it so you understand everything. It's really an amazing game in the Dutch, which there's a lot of. And I'll see you in the future. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for future videos. See you in the future.